Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. Welcome back to another installment of Ask The Supt with Sandwich School Superintendent Dr. Joe Marushek. Thank you for all of you who have participated in these shows by sending your questions to me at askoursuperintendent@gmail.com. Please keep them coming. This is the fuel that gets us going. We are rounding third on the school year here, and we've got a lot to talk about, as we always do. Dr. Joe, welcome back.
Great to be here, Greg.
You look all tan. You must have been in Dorchester or something.
Actually, Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore.
It's lovely this time of year.
On a cloudy day, you can still get the burn. Seriously, where were you?
My wife and I spent April vacation in Aruba, so it was just medicine for the soul, so to speak. We just had a terrific time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back. I was traveling for work last week as well and realized that I picked the wrong week to travel because everyone and their kid was in the airport traveling for school vacation.
Yeah, it can be a little hairy.
Yeah. Did not gauge that one properly, but that's why they have bars.
True.
In airports.
True.
So thank God. All right, how are things going?
Things are going really, really well. To kind of run with your metaphor, yes, we are definitely in a full sprint towards home plate. Home plate being the end of the school year. May and June are totally loaded with activities, and then we've got our graduation of the class of 2023 coming up in about 5 weeks or so with that.
My gosh.
And it's flown by.
How does the superintendent deal with the kids that, probably you and I were like this, that go through senior slump? You're just like, I don't care. 5 weeks, come on.
Myself and Jim Mulcahy discuss this pretty frequently. I think it's knowing who your teachers are, who your go-to teachers are, that really know their kids and know their kids well. And if a kid going through that type of slump just kind of needs a little shot in the arm or needs a little one-on-one talk or something, knowing who those folks are.
Yeah.
And the thing that I can say about Jim is remarkably skillful in knowing his staff members and who his, sometimes we refer to them, go-to people are.
Yeah, they got a finger on the pulse.
Absolutely.
All right, we've got some good questions for you, a couple here. One is, can you explain your thoughts on the requirements to teach state standards versus teacher flexibility that makes sense in each classroom?
Okay. I would say that first and foremost, like every public school district across the Commonwealth, part of the kind of standards and accountability system is the simple fact that we are teaching to the standards, and particularly, the ones that get the most accountability obviously are English language arts and mathematics, vis-a-vis MCAS, but science and social studies are also important. And I think, the philosophical construct is, we owe it to kids to ensure that there is a common curriculum that is rigorous, that's based upon standards of what kids should know and be able to do. So there's that piece, but I also kind of reject the notion that in having a standards-based system, teachers cannot have individual flexibility to do things. For example, we've talked about this at the school committee level, and recently I wrote a column about it. 8th grade now, as part of the state standards, have to implement a civics project. It's known as Civics in Action.
Right.
Jeff Duffany has made a decision, and again, here's the flexibility, to have it a community-based project about civics here in Sandwich.
Yeah.
And he's engaged 8th grade students in, connecting with our Board of Selectmen, the Recreation Committee, because the project was brainstorming around a teen center and so on. So he could have done a civics project that had to do with the Massachusetts legislature or had something to do with a national issue.
Sure.
So you can have standards, but there's enough flexibility so that teachers can make good instructional decisions about what could be interesting and engaging to kids.
So I guess the key word that you said in there, enough flexibility. Is there enough? Because the question kind of infers that some teachers may be strapped to too much of that state requirement. Do you feel there's enough flexibility
I
generally?
do feel that there's enough flexibility. I think there's probably a little more flexibility as kids are older and the topics of study become more complex. I think when you look in those early grades, it's really all about basic literacy and basic numeracy, and oftentimes the curriculum might be a little bit more, a little more prescriptive.
Yeah.
But again, I've been in kindergarten classrooms, I've been in first grade classrooms that remarkably creative things are happening.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's necessarily an all or nothing prospect.
Good. Here's your second question. What are your thoughts on MCAS? Is it a good measure of a student's learning, and what else might be a better measure?
Sure. I have kind of a middle-of-the-road approach with regard to MCAS. I don't believe MCAS should be eliminated, and I know that there's been different groups such as the MTA, or the Massachusetts Teachers Association, that has put out there about completely eliminating or pauses on MCAS and so on. I do think you need some type of testing measurement system for, again, the sake of accountability. However, I do think it is a little heavy-handed. Do we necessarily be needing to test all of our kids every single year from 3 to 8 in grade 10? When the whole testing and accountability movement started, in the early 90s, initially states were testing kids at just like 3rd grade or 4th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. There's no reason why we couldn't do maybe more of a staggered testing schedule where you could say, okay, we're going to do ELA 357, and we're going to do math 468, something like that. I think like most things, we need a little bit more balance with respect to it. I think there is a whole host of other assessments that we could be using that are much more meaningful than a high-stakes test like MCAS. I'm a big believer in performance-based assessments like portfolio assessment, where kids could say, keep something like a digital portfolio, an online portfolio, collecting their best work over a period of time. I've had a lot of experience as a high school principal, but even in my present context as a superintendent, where you do things like portfolios or capstone assessments, where you bring in parents, you bring in community members to see an exhibition of the student's work. And yes, an assessment is made. It could be made from a panel of teachers or community members assessing the student's work, but invariably, it also ends up as a celebration of learning. Right. I've had the opportunity numerous times throughout my career, again, using portfolio assessment at the end of the year in May, June, where a student is reflecting upon their work, and the student, the teachers, parents who are invited say, oh my God, Greg has really grown a lot in in the course of the school year. So I'm a big believer that, yes, it is important that our students are meeting standards, grade level standards, but looking at that growth piece, I think,
Yeah.
is equally important.
Because the MCAS definitely, I mean, I remember when my kids went through it, it's stressful.
It's extremely stressful.
Very stressful.
But it's also stressful for our staff as well, and for
Yeah.
the admin team and so on. And it's disruptive to the regular course of, the operation. And realize this, that we've kind of gone a little bit too much in one direction with how much we're testing kids. Because realize we're also doing internal benchmark assessments and so
Right.
on. And oftentimes I'll hear from teachers, you know how many days during the course of the school year where we actually have to take a break because we're testing? And we only have 180 days of instruction with the kids.
Yeah. And that's you need the standards by which to measure success and failure and everything in between, but you also need the personal side of measurement.
Absolutely.
Some of what you're talking about, which, but that would be hard to replicate. Those taking something that's a little off the mark of a structured MCAS and do something. I don't know how creative can testing be that is replicated from town to town and city to city. Do you know what I mean?
You mean if we use something that was alternative
to
an
MCAS.
MCAS?
Yeah.
Okay, so something you don't know about me. My doctoral work and my doctoral dissertation focused on performance-based assessment, particularly using portfolios.
That came up in your background check.
All right.
That and what happened with you and stealing a bicycle at the age of 15? Come on.
It was only a misdemeanor.
Exactly. Go ahead.
But there's a tremendous body of work out there, Greg, with regard to research-based ways that you can kind of standardize the process of assessing a kid's performance, be it, again, a portfolio, a capstone project, something of that like. It's really the tools that you're using, things like rubrics, things like being able to assess a student's reflection, and so on. So there are protocols that could be standardized from community to community.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your evaluation. We're talking about testing the students. Tell me a little bit about how the school system, because you're coming up on a year, correct?
Yeah, July 1st, it'll be a year.
So tell me what the school administrations or the school committees process is to assess whether Dr. Joe Maruschek is doing what he needs to do.
Sure. So it is kind of interesting, your previous question, because in the same vein, my performance as superintendent is going to be assessed by the school committee very much using a performance-based assessment type model. A lot of it is...
Is it standard?
For the most part, it is standard for superintendents across the state.
Okay.
So it's kind of a cycle where a very, very comprehensive rubric instrument is used, where I'm judged in 4 overall standards for performance around things like management and operations, financial management, instructional leadership, culture and climate building, and so on. So I do a self-evaluation, but then I also have goal-setting goals that I have to put forward publicly that the school committee signs off on. So it starts with a student learning goal, and usually that'll be related to, say, a cohort of students or some type of achievement within the district. Professional practice goal related to my own professional development as a superintendent. And then usually 3 prioritized district improvement goals. So those are put out there publicly. The school committee votes to accept those. And then, like educators, very, very similar as far as the cycle, except mine works on a 1-year cycle. There is a half-year check-in point as far as just kind of a formative assessment, particularly around how I'm progressing in the attainment of those goals.
Okay.
And then at the end of roughly 1 year, there is an overall evaluation of goals, but then also my performance in each of those 4 standard areas. And the rubric is kind of a 4-point rubric where it goes from unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, to exemplary.
So these goals are these 5 goals, right?
Correct.
3, 1, and 1.
Correct.
Have they already been introduced and you are about to be measured on them, or are they about to be rolled out?
So what I've put out, and as we're taping this, we have a school committee meeting this evening. I've kind of put out a student learning goal around MCAS improvement in some of our most targeted areas, and we're looking at potentially grade 5 and 6 ELA with regard to MCAS performance, or grade 7 and 8 mathematics.
Okay. What does that mean? What's specific to the goal?
Specific in looking at improving our results where there is lagging performance. So specifically looking at where our 2022 results are relative back to 2019, and saying, okay, the growth that we will show from 2022 to 2023 will be, say, something like a 5% increase in student proficiency rates.
Okay.
And that kind of goes back to the whole conversation around some of the lapses we still have post-pandemic.
Right.
And what are the measures that we're putting in place to catch kids who still need interventions in math or in writing or whatever.
Right.
So we've got that goal. The district improvement goals, I have not specifically written what they will be in all the individual benchmarks and steps, but probably should be no surprise. It'll be goals related to enrollment decreases and kind of stemming that tide and putting in some measures in place to kind of stabilize our enrollment and to bolster it. The second one is really around communication and feedback, of ensuring that we're doing everything in our power vis-a-vis customer service and connecting with our families, giving them the information they need, giving them information about their children's progress. And the third one, again, as we discussed before, is really around school safety.
Yeah.
What are the measures that we're putting in place vis-a-vis infrastructure and structures to ensure that our schools are well fortified, but also some of that planning piece as well.
When you're looking at these goals and you're setting forth, okay, here's where I want to take this administration. Who is the team? Who makes up the team around you that advises you? I mean, I understand you got principals and assistant superintendent and all of these people, but I'm interested in your world. Who advises you on things that are important, that are going to help keep you on track, but also keep the administration on track? And I liken it to, when a president gets elected, people think, oh my God, when he's in there, we're all going to hell in a handbasket because he's the only one. Well, there are a number of people around a president or a leader that advise and can influence. So I always look at, who are those folks? Who are the people around you?
Well, first and foremost, we have our district leadership team, which is central office administration, but then also our principals and assistant principals, and it's a grand total of 14 of us. So those people are extremely important to me. They're extremely important particularly my principals and assistant principals, because they've got their ear to the ground and they're the ones interacting with students and families and so on more than anybody. But realize spreading that, I'm very, very actively involved in our state association, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, MASS. But realize we have a roundtable group known as the Old Colony Roundtable, which is pretty much Cape and the Islands and the South Coast.
Yeah.
But we also have a Cape and the Islands smaller group. So if I'm struggling with an issue as far as like a problem of practice, I've got a good cadre of colleagues that I honestly have solid relationship with to help kind of inform my thinking.
You have Maureen Wicklund, who is retiring, and you have a new assistant superintendent coming on board. His name is Dave Quinn. Tell me about him and who is your number two person?
Sure. So we had a great process. We had approximately 30 applicants for Maureen's position. Yeah. Some really strong applicants. We had a search committee interview, and then they forwarded me 3 finalists. All were outstanding. Dave Quinn, who I worked with in my previous district, he now serves as the Director of Instructional Technology for the Mendon Upton Regional School District. Really, in my humble opinion, is the right person at the right time. Dave works in the context of providing a lot of professional development to individual and teams of teachers within the district, and he's incredibly skillful at doing that work. But I think the piece that he really is skilled at is just kind of being a spark for innovation. Over his 7 years in Mendon Upton, he's brought things like makerspace, commonplace use of artificial intelligence in the classroom, and getting teachers to think about, a program like ChatGPT. How could I actually use this? Is this just like
that is a wild concept, even in business. But
the piece is. And again, I think we're in this place, Greg, we better figure out a use of tools like this, because if we don't, we're going to have problems.
Yeah.
So, and most recently, he's worked in the district, and has brought in significant grant funds through the Department of Education to do work around what are known as innovation pathways, where students take a prescribed set of courses, say in something like computer science, but then they have their senior year a really meaningful internship out in the community. I am super excited to start that type of work here in Sandwich, and having Dave as a partner in that work.
So that work is pretty new. I mean,
Very
it would
new.
be new to the
Absolutely.
school district.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what's the appetite from the faculty perspective for that type of innovation and that type of?
Oh, I think people are definitely hungry for it.
Yeah.
I think, again, kind of to your earlier question about that balancing act. If you're a teacher, it's important that you have high standards, and yes, you want your kids to achieve very well, but you also want your kids to be passionate about their subject.
Be inspired.
To be inspired.
Yeah.
And if you're doing things that are innovative in nature, you're going to get that inspiration.
Yeah. Interesting. When does Dave start?
He will start July 1st.
July 1st. And 30 applicants.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Did that surprise you?
I was very surprised. And you're going to get some applicants that you know, it's a little head scratcher of like,
Yeah.
why did you apply for this position?
Yeah.
But that was very, very few. We
Yeah.
had some folks that were seated assistant superintendents. We had some folks that, you know, high school principal types
Yeah.
applying for the position. So it made me feel good.
Yeah.
I do think our community is a very, very desirable one, a desirable place to work. And I think, you know, we've achieved a lot, but I think we have a tremendous amount of potential here.
Yeah. All right. You know, I always try to guide you towards ending on a really good note. I think I'm going to end on that one.
You done good.
That is it. I do my job very well. Dr. Joe, thank you so much. You've got a school committee meeting tonight. A lot on
do.
your plate.
We do.
You're going to be talking about these goals, and I wish you good luck. And of course, we've probably got one more show before, maybe two.
We could do
Two
May
more.
and June.
Yeah, we'll
whatever
do,
works
we'll
for
do
you.
May and June. And if anything, this is also an opportunity to wish Maureen Wickland a farewell. She and I sit on the board for Sandwich Community Television, so I've got her for a long time. But what a great job she has done.
She's
and,
amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, just a fixture. Now, Dave wouldn't mind changing his last name to Wickland, would he? Just to keep things a little more consistent?
He's a proud Irishman. I don't know. That could be
That could be a problem?
tall task.
Okay, all right. Well, just make a note of that. Inflexible. No, that's great. All right, Dr. Joe, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And my friends, please keep sending those questions in. AskOurSuperintendent@gmail.com. They will come directly to me, and I look forward to hearing from you. See you soon, Sandwich.